Democratic Senator from Delaware, Chris Coons, went on CNN and he spoke about the direction that the party should go in. Let's watch.
Debate right now about the direction of the Democratic Party. Take a listen. Their son of Delaware, Vice President Joe Biden, talking about white working class voters that he thinks clearly too many Democrats have been ignoring and insulting. Take a listen.
There's this sort of sense that's grown up in the Democratic Party that somehow folks are these are good people, man. These aren't racist. These aren't sexist.
What's your reaction, sir?
Well, if you look back to the 1980s, the time in my life when I was first coming up, I cast my first vote in the 1984 election. Democrats lost, I think it was 4 out of 5 presidential elections in a row, or 4 out of 5 in a period there in the Reagan and Bush era. And our party had gotten pretty far off track and frankly hadn't engaged enough with the people who became the so-called Reagan Democrats. And I think Joe Biden, who understands America and understands our middle class better than anybody in national politics, has a real point here, which is that there's millions of Americans who voted for Donald Trump, not because they're racist, not because they're so-called deplorables, but because they wanted change. They're frustrated. They feel like they haven't gotten the benefit out of the significant increase in productivity and in wealth in this country in recent years. And they see the economy and they see our country moving past them. And they're wondering who's going to stand up and fight for them. I agree with Joe that Democrats are the natural allies of the working class in America, and that going back to the FDR coalition, we've had the ideas and the initiatives and the solutions that have met their real needs and their problems day in and day out. But we may have gotten away from that in recent years, and I think it's something that as Democrats look at our prospects going forward, we need to spend more time listening to folks who voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, and then turned and voted for Donald Trump in 2016.
Senator Chris Coons.
What a bigot. Bitch. You want to, listen to the people who voted for the other guy? It's much easier to just deflect and obfuscate and rationalize Hillary's loss and shame them and call them bad people. Yeah, then you're going to keep losing. So, look, I want to be clear about this because this is something where at times in the past I've lacked enough nuance on this topic. I'm not going to learn for a split second anything from the Trump voters on racism, sexism, and bigotry. And I'm not going to learn from the percentage that voted for Trump because of those things. So there's no denying he was in bed with some shady characters. They loved him. Various white supremacist groups, white nationalist groups, the alt-right, aka neo-Nazis, if you've seen that video with Richard Spencer, one of the leaders of the alt-right. So those people, yeah, there's nothing for us to learn from them because, again, their whole reason in voting for him was, oh, wasn't it great when he said we should kick out 1.6 billion Muslims, not allow 1.6 billion Muslims into the U.S.? Oh my God, that was my favorite thing that he said. Wasn't it great when he said we should deport every single undocumented immigrant? Oh my God, that was awesome. Oh, wasn't it amazing when he said we should do nationwide stop and frisk, which overwhelmingly targets minorities, and it has well over a 90% failure rate. So you're just taking away the Fourth Amendment rights of minorities in America, and it's not even effective. It's a police state for minorities, and they're like, oh, that's the best. I want that so bad. So I want nothing to do with those people. I don't need to learn anything from them. They need to spend some time reflecting on how immoral they are and spend some time in a fucking library learning about the world. But the point Chris Coons is making here is, well, why wouldn't we listen to the ones who really are the victims that have been left behind by a shitty system? So this reminds me of the segment we did where Van Jones, the first episode of his new show, he spoke to former two-time Obama voters who flipped to Trump. Now, you might think, what do you mean? That's like a fucking unicorn. That doesn't exist. Wrong. That does exist. And that, in fact, that's exactly why Hillary Clinton lost the election, because the Rust Belt was flipped. The former Democratic firewall, they called it, was flipped. And Democrats were so confident in those areas that Hillary didn't even campaign in Wisconsin. I mean, that's amazing. So the Democratic firewall fell because the white working class said, you know what? I'm not buying it, Hillary. You say you're against TPP. You never bring it up on the campaign trail. You were in favor of NAFTA. You were in favor of the Colombia Free Trade Agreement after saying you were going to be against it. You pushed for TPP 45 times. You called it the gold standard of trade deals. We learned in WikiLeaks that you want open trade borders, which is mental for the U.S. worker. So they didn't buy your bullshit, and they went to Trump because of that, because he kept speaking out against TPP. He kept saying he's for the workers. You didn't even pay fucking lip service to it. So from those people, the message is crystal fucking clear. That's it, bitch. No more outsourcing. No more outsourcing. And while that's happening, the Democratic president is pushing TPP. And you wonder why the Republicans won. Because even though Obama's done other things that are good things, when you keep pushing for these trade deals, which devastated those communities, I don't think people get it. Those communities are fucking devastated when it's a one factory town and then that factory up and leaves. Everybody's on unemployment. Everybody's miserable. Addiction spikes. So that's the reality. And we need to listen to those voters instead of doing what? The exact wrong thing that I've seen many writers do. We covered Jamel Bowie did it soon after the election. He said wrote an article, there's no such thing as a good Trump voter. What? That's like, imagine somebody wrote an article, there's no such thing as a good Jew. There's no such thing as a good Muslim. Everybody would go, that is fucking bigotry 101. But when it comes to voting for a candidate, and people have very different reasons for voting for candidates, he goes, I don't care. The argument is, at the end of the day, you're making excuses for white nationalism. But what if they're not doing that? What if they're like, I despise all that shit about him, and I'll overlook that shit because at least I don't think I'll lose my fucking job, or at least I think I'll get my job back if he's elected. What then? They still want to paint you with a broad brush and say, nope, you're all bad. No such thing as a good Trump voter. There's no such thing as a good Trump voter, and you're all making excuses for white nationalism. Unless you oppose him on absolutely everything, you support white nationalism. Think about how stupid that is. The last minimum wage increase we got was under George W. Bush. So should Democrats have opposed that? Because, you know what? I don't want to sign on to the Iraq war, so now I'm going to oppose that. But you're not signing on for the Iraq war. You're signing on for a minimum wage increase. Yeah, but cut off your nose to spite your face. Don't be in favor of the minimum wage increase because then you're okay with the Iraq war. But that's not true. You're making it up. You make shit up in your head and then you project it onto other people. That doesn't make it the reality of the situation. That doesn't make it objective. That makes you up your own ass. So this is what a lot of establishment Democratic writers have been doing, and it's disgusting. And here's Senator Chris Coons saying the most obvious thing ever. Hey, how about we listen to the reasonable people who voted for Obama twice and then flip to Trump? Maybe listen to those Trump voters and learn a thing or two and correct for the next election. If you say no to that, you're going to keep losing. And it's all about deflecting and obfuscating and rationalizing the loss and not about self-analysis to figure out how to get better. And at least the fucking Republicans did the autopsy report after 2012 when they got their ass handed to them. What are the Democrats doing today? Nothing. Stop. No, blame Comey, the FBI, and Vladimir Putin, and WikiLeaks, and fucking Gary Johnson, and Jill Stein, and everybody, and the voters, and hey, you don't understand. Leave Hillary alone. You're so sad and so pathetic.